Welcome, America. I'm Alex Dunn, and tonight I will take you on a journey through the history, the rhetoric, and significance of Franklin Delano Roosevelt's For Freedom speech. Given on January 6, 1941, Franklin Delano Roosevelt spoke to a world immersed in war and a nation weary from economic depression, not looking to go into another one. Let us first take a look at Roosevelt's introduction to the For Freedom speech.
In the future days, which we seek to make secure, we look forward to a world founded upon four essential human freedoms.
I love this introduction because Roosevelt immediately is telling his audience what he wants. He wants to secure the future, and he's going to do it in four different ways. Also, I love the reference to John Locke, the Enlightenment thinker. Four essential human freedoms sounds familiar, doesn't it? In World War II, America had remained neutral thus far. But FDR's speech brought new questions of Americans to mind. Questions of neutrality. Would America be going to its second World War? And now I'll be sending it to Victor Samonte and his team of analysts.
I'm here tonight with two literary majors, experts in their fields. My friend Joseph Peters, a Harvard graduate, and his esteemed colleague Ian Edwards of Princeton.
Now come join us as we take a look into FDR's speech.
FDR's For Freedom speech, a speech that characterizes the American identity. Given on January 6, 1941 in his State of the Union address, FDR addressed a nation that was worried and tired, sick of international warfare. In the midst of World War II, FDR offered comfort and solace to a nation that was struggling to cope with the hardships of war.
Thank you very much, Mr. Samonte, for inviting me here. And Dr. Edwards, I'm a huge fan of your work, and I am very honored to be a part of this panel here today to discuss the For Freedom speech.
I appreciate it. Let's get into it right now, boys.
In analysis of FDR's famous speech, one has to pay close attention to the context in which it was given. Like Mr. Samonte said, these freedoms characterize American identity. FDR is just reminding the people of their strong heritage, that they're part of this great nation, and that yes, the times ahead may be rough, but in order for success, we must join together now.
The first is freedom of speech and expression everywhere in the world.
In his first freedom, he talked about freedom of speech, which is allusion to the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, of course.
Yes.
Creating just a real sense of nationalism among the audience at the time, which they really needed, and really needed to feel that comfort of their country and their community as a whole.
So, freedom of speech, a message that we're trying to convey to the rest of the world as people in Europe, people in Asia are being censored and people are being brutally treated, tortured, is really a message that we want everyone to hear. We want to hear, they want to hear how America...
Now we'd like to take this opportunity to go ahead and dive into the second freedom, the freedom of religion.
The second is freedom of every person to worship God in his own way, everywhere in the world.
This freedom is a freedom that really was not enjoyed by other people in other nations at this time.
At a time of conflict, when there's discord among nations, civil liberties are often suspended. In this case, in World War II, Germany persecuted many religious groups and just social groups in general, such as homosexuals, Jews, gypsies, and others. FDR, by pursuing this just cause of religious liberation and freedom, he inspired the rest of the world to do the same.
Yes, of course. True.
I now have correspondent Charles Whiteley here with me, who's going to give us his input on the situation. Charles? Nothing to say as usual. Back to you, Ian.
He's a little shy.
Once I built a railroad.
The third is freedom from want, which, translated into world terms, means economic understanding, which will secure to every nation a healthy peacetime life for its inhabitants everywhere in the world.
Now, Joseph Peters is here with some input on the third freedom, the freedom of want.
FDR is basically promising the American people a prosperous economic future. He is saying that in their capitalist economy, people have the ability to make money and to prosper. and he's also denouncing communism.
Facing the world in 1941, particularly America, we had severe economic depression resulting from the stock market crash in 1929. Due to speculation and on-margin buying throughout the roaring 20s, we had essentially no idea where our economy was going. Once the farmers failed after the Dust Bowl, hope was all lost. However, FDR's alphabet soup, as they called it, or economic reform programs, led the way to a new American economy. And when we involved ourselves in World War II, the mobilization of the United States further led to the development of our economy and return to normalcy, as Warren G. Harding put it.
Yes.
The fourth is freedom from fear, which, translated into world terms, means a worldwide reduction of armaments to such a point and in such a thorough fashion that no nation will be in a position to commit an act of physical aggression against any neighbor, anywhere in the world.
You know, the freedom of fear was it was important for this nation right now after a dreaded World War I, and then followed by the Great Depression. You know, I'm sure they just had shivers throughout the 30s.
Roosevelt highlights the idea of a reduction of armaments, really talking about creating a safer world. It's almost going back to Wilson's ideas.
And now let's look at the before and afters you were just talking about. Wilson was a president who advocated for kind of international collectivity, kind of a unit of countries who were kind of going to come together and make the world a better place. That's why he had his League of Nations in his Article 10 of his 14 points.
Through this reduction of armaments, FDR is trying to say that after this dreaded war, peace will come.
Welcome. This week we will be continuing our discussion and analysis of FDR's For Freedom speech. Now I'll be sending it to the team who's waiting on standby right now at the studio.
In his speech, FDR uses positively charged diction paired with specific, complex syntax in order to create a patriotic and nationalistic sense of tone. The purpose of this speech is to unite the nation, and he does so by speaking directly to the people and inciting a sense of unity amongst everyone.
And I have to agree with Joseph on this
Yes.
one. One of the important elements that he uses to create unity is his parallelism between the freedoms by saying everywhere in the world at the end of each segment.
Yes.
As my colleague Mr. Edwards just articulated, Roosevelt so eloquently used the tactic of saying everywhere in the world at the end of each statement to create a sense of place and unity among his audience. By saying everywhere in the world, he kind of combined his whole audience, just not just the United States, but the entire world. Everywhere in the world, every country, people across the globe.
Yes. He was speaking to the American people, but he had a global audience.
Now I'd like to introduce Charlie Whiteley with our viewer question of the day. Charlie?
So, how was the speech perceived by people in the 1940s?
That's a great question, Mr. Whiteley. In order to answer it properly, we're going to look at some interviews from the time.
After a hard day's work, my family and I decided to listen to Franklin Delano Roosevelt's State of the Union address. In the midst of troubling times in the continent of Europe, Roosevelt made me feel more secure. This speech reminded me why he is the President of the United States. He's such a great leader, an influential person, and it made me proud of my country.
I am very impressed with President Roosevelt's initiative to reach out to other religions around the world.
Roosevelt uses a complex syntax structure in order to appeal to a large mass of people and get his message across to the entire world.
Key aspect of the rhetorical elements which FDR used in this speech was his prolific use of positively charged diction that helped to inspire the people and really brought about a sense of nationalism and patriotism. Mr. Edwards, what do you have to say about the diction?
I have to agree with you, Joe, on how great the rhetoric was in this piece. If I could choose one word to describe Roosevelt's diction, I would have to say patriotic, which is really important for maintaining his theme of freedom.
Yes.
Because even at the beginning of
Couldn't agree more.
each point, each freedom that he makes in the speech, he still uses the word freedom. He doesn't say the second or just the third. He says the second freedom, the third freedom. Really reiterating that point, that these are very essential and very important to...
As our esteemed colleague Theo Manzikos once said, what is freedom?
Theo will be greatly missed.
It was a terrible tragedy, that churro factory explosion. What a loss, a great mind, and an even greater friend.
Extraordinary analysis by the team. Now, we'd like to look at the last part of the Four Freedom speech.
That is no vision of a distant millennium. It is a definite basis for a kind of world attainable in our own time and generation. That kind of world is the very antithesis of the so-called new order of tyranny, which the dictators seek to create with the crash of a bomb.
In Roosevelt's conclusion, he emphasizes the attainability of these four freedoms. Also, he makes a direct reference to the dictators of the time. One of the most significant repercussions of this speech was Norman Rockwell's painting of the Four Freedoms, in which he depicts freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom from fear, and freedom from want, in a way Americans can interpret and understand better. Norman Rockwell's paintings not only acted as an inspiration to Americans, but also as a form of war propaganda. On a tour around the country, Rockwell's paintings gained over $130,000 in war bonds. And that's a wrap. Thank you for watching, America, and until next week, so long from all the crew here.